Hello and welcome to Module 9. This is going to be about nuclear energy. We're going to start out by talking about radiation exposure. And so without further ado, personal annual radiation exposure. And the first thing I'd like you to do is take a look at the first video in the Q list of videos about whether radiation is dangerous or not. So that's how I'd like you to start. And once you've watched that video, come back here and we're going to start by doing the personal annual radiation exposure. And the way I'd like to talk about this is by doing it worksheet style and just explain to you the different ways that you are exposed to radiation so that you can understand your daily exposures. That way we can start to talk about abnormal level exposures and then how we produce energy with exposures. And with this part of the lecture comes an assignment sheet that you are also asked to fill out. It's worth 20 points to your course credits, and it's an additional assignment sheet that you can do hand in hand while I'm explaining your exposure limits, or you can just do it directly after watching this video part 1. So you don't have to worry about setting up calculation table. And so first off, we're going to just talk about exposure data and just the amount of mrem, and these are rhodons of exposure mans. So this is millirhodons exposure mans within these limits. And that's what this number is basically talking about, what is safe and healthy versus unhealthy levels of exposure. So how much to get sick is 25,000 mrem. And how much to die is 35,000 in 60 days. Or if you're going to die within 2 weeks, you have to have 50,000. And then for a small or instant death, you need over 100,000. And that's a huge exposure limit, like so much that you wouldn't even get this exposure limit if you were exposed to a reactor core within a reactor facility producing electricity. This is weapons grade exposure cores. So starting off on our sheet and creating a total for your amount of exposure, dependent on what altitude you live at, you are more exposed to cosmic radiation. These are your cosmic or extraterrestrial, so your atmospheric or sun-based radiation exposures. And so if you live near sea level, you're about 26 mrem, where if you live at higher elevations over 50,000 feet, you are at 47 mrem. So please take a moment and mark down how many mrem so that you can create a mrem total. And if you need to, look up your elevation in the place that you live or the place that you spend most of your time. The next radiation exposure is based on terrestrial, and so this is your soil and ocean exposures. And if you live within 200 miles of the Gulf of Mexico, give yourself 16, the Atlantic Ocean 18. If you live in the Colorado plateaus because of all the uranium-rich soils, give yourself 63. And if you live anywhere in the continental United States that's not near one of the oceans that we're talking about, give yourself 30. Most of us, if we're in Valhalla area, will be near the Atlantic Ocean, and so therefore we'll give ourselves 18. Building materials. If you live, specifically sleeping, if you are sleeping in a residency made out of stone, brick, or concrete, please give yourself the appropriate marking of mrem. And if you happen to sleep in the basement, and this is even if you're sleeping in the basement of a home built with wood construction or vinyl construction or some other building material, if you happen to have your sleeping room is in the basement part of your home because of your radium exposure and things like radon and soil, you will give yourself a 9 mrem exposure. So please add that. So for example, if you had a concrete home and you slept in the basement of that concrete home, you're going to give yourself an 18. Where if you are living in a wood home and you just happen to have your bedroom be in the basement, give yourself a 9. So give yourself the number that is appropriate to your home in that section. Next one is power plant exposure if you live near a nuclear power plant. And so for most students in this class, since you are at Westchester Community College, and that is located near Valhalla or in Valhalla, you are probably in Westchester. And so if you are in the outer part of the circle on this radius, this little outer part circle, give yourself a 0.0001 mrem. And if you happen to be in the 10-mile radius, the little inner circle, give yourself a 0.0003 mrem for your nuclear power plant exposure. Now, the next part requires you to do a little research. So I'd like you to hop on to your .gov or your state, and I give you the little skew for New York, but if you happen to be in another state, please use the appropriate state, and add up how many coal-fired natural gas fossil fuel-based power plants will be near you, because you will have your standard radiation exposures from radium and thorium found within coals and fossil fuels and other waste materials in those fired power plants. Give yourself a 0.3 for each one. So for example, I live in Ridgefield. I am near 3 facilities, so I will give myself a 0.9 on my number scale for when I'm adding this up. But give yourself the appropriate number for the number of power plants near you on this part of the question. Next one is about food. So we eat radioactive things. We are radioactive things. We are carbon-14, right? We are a living thing. We are carbon-14, which means we create radiation ourselves. And so if you happen to eat animal-based food, you have radiation exposure from doing that, and you can give yourself 120 mrem. If you happen to only eat that meat-based food, so that animal-based food, 3 times a week, give yourself 60. And animal-based food counts as things like cheeses. So, vegans can skip this question. But if you ain't the vegan, you go to the other questions. If you happen to eat quite a bit of bananas, carrots, or potatoes, and you eat them about 3 times a week, you are consuming potassium 40, which is also, potassium 40, which is also radioactive. And so therefore, you give yourself a 20 mrem. And if you happen to have a very normal vegetable intake, you are eating a vegetable a day, give yourself 30. So for example, if I'm eating meat every day, I give myself 120. And if I happen to add one of these 3 veggies often, I'm going to add 20 to that, giving myself 140. And then I do eat my vegetables every day. And so I'm going to give myself another 30 onto my 140. And so you're going to add together the numbers that are appropriate for yourself. Water. We drink water. We bathe in water. We are exposed to uranium and thorium in water. So give yourself 10 mrem. Next one is breathing. We breathe air. Air contains radon. Give yourself 200 mrem for radon. Jet planes. This is once again one that's going to be variable based on students. When you are up in the plane, you are farther up in the atmosphere, therefore exposed to more cosmic radiation. So even in that duration of time, you're going to give yourself a 0.5 on your mrem for each hour of flight. So if you're on a 2-hour flight, you're going to give yourself 1 mrem. If you are on an 8-hour flight, you're going to give yourself a set of 2 mrem, right? You're going to just add up your mrem on your flight times. If you are walking through a scanning system, so if you pass through a scanning system, please give yourself a 0.002 for each scanning system you've walked through. And do this for the number of flights that you've taken this year and the number of X-ray scans that you've had this year. Add up your total and put that in your box for your total. Some other sources, if you sleep next to some living thing. Now, this means not your goldfish. You can skip your goldfish. But, if you're sleeping with your puppy or your kitty or another human being, please add the number of mrem to those human beings or those animals that you're living with. You are all carbon-14, and just think the love. You are radiating each other in your sleep. So much snuggles, right? Nuclear fallout, all the weapons testing we've done, you're going to give yourself a 0.1. Porcelain crowns and false teeth, if you have any fillings, give yourself a 0.07 for each filling. Luminous objects that are LCDs, LCD luminous items, if you happen to sit yourself in front of them, each LCD luminous item that you kind of put yourself in front of daily, give yourself a 0.006 for each one of those. You're going to add 1 mrem for each hour per day you spend watching TV or sitting in front of a computer. And then finally, you're going to give yourself a 0.008 mrem for each smoke detector in your home. So add all those up, and I'm going to pick up with medical sources and totaling up your numbers.